In the quiet dawn of the medieval world, the sun rises slowly over a landscape shaped by centuries of human survival and forgotten empires, where mist drifts across river valleys and the first church bells echo through cold air, calling farmers, monks, and craftsmen awake to another uncertain day. This is a world without certainty, where life is measured not in years but in seasons, harvests, and wars, and where every sunrise feels earned. Across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, the medieval age does not begin with a single moment, but seeps into existence after the fall of ancient powers, leaving behind shattered roads, crumbling cities, and memories of Rome, Han, Persia, and Gupta glory. Stone by stone, humanity begins again, building with rough hands and inherited knowledge in a time when history is not written for most people but lived through hunger, faith, and endurance. As torchlight flickers against ancient stone, the early medieval world feels smaller, darker, and closer to the earth. Forests reclaim abandoned highways, wolves howl where legions once marched, and villages cling to rivers like lifelines. Wooden huts with thatched roofs breathe smoke through narrow holes as families gather around hearth fires, smelling of damp wool, ash, and barley bread. Iron tools are precious and heavy, forged slowly by blacksmiths whose hammer strikes ring like a heartbeat through the settlement. Every object carries labor, every meal carries risk, and every winter carries fear. Yet beyond these humble lives, distant courts still glow with ambition, as emperors, caliphs, and kings dream of order, conquest, and divine purpose. In the shadow of collapsing Rome, Europe fractures into countless worlds of feudal loyalty, where power is local and protection is everything. Armored riders thunder across muddy fields, sworn to lords who promise land in exchange for blood. Castles rise not as symbols of beauty, but of survival, their walls thick, damp, and scarred, built to endure siege, fire, and time. Inside their halls, smoke curls upward, mixing with the smell of sweat, leather, and roasting meat, while banners hang heavy in the still air. Monks bend over parchment in candlelit rooms, preserving fragments of ancient knowledge, their quills scratching softly as if whispering to the future that the past is not yet lost. Far beyond these castles, the medieval story unfolds differently, yet with the same pulse of human struggle. In the Islamic world, cities like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo blaze with learning and movement, where scholars debate mathematics, medicine, and stars under lantern light. Paper flows through markets filled with spice, smoke, voices, and color, while caravans cross deserts, guided by constellations known by heart. Water wheels turn steadily, feeding gardens and baths, proof that technology survives even when empires fall. Faith here is woven into daily rhythm. 5 calls to prayer rising like waves over rooftops, reminding believers that time itself belongs to something greater to the east. Dynasties rise and fall across China, where medieval life hums with discipline, invention, and order. Rice paddies mirror the sky as farmers work knee-deep in water, wearing straw hats against the sun, while distant drums announce officials passing along stone roads. Gunpowder, silk printing, and canals reshape civilization quietly and permanently. Massive walls snake across mountains, not merely as defenses, but as declarations of endurance. Here the medieval age is not darkness, but balance, where bureaucracy, ritual, and innovation hold chaos at bay. In Africa, kingdoms flourish along gold and salt routes, where the Sahara is not a barrier, but a bridge crossed by camel trains, moving like shadows through endless sand. Timbuktu emerges as a center of trade and learning, where manuscripts are treasured and mosques rise from earth and wood, blending faith with landscape. Along the Nile, life pulses as it has for millennia, flooding, renewing, feeding a civilization that adapts rather than collapses. Medieval here means continuity, not interruption. Across the world, the same elements bind humanity together: wind, rain, hunger, belief, and hope. Blacksmith fires glow in every culture, marketplaces echo with bargaining, laughter, and argument. Children chase each other through dust and snow alike. Medieval life is not frozen in armor and kings, but alive in calloused hands and watchful eyes. It is a time when the night is truly dark and the stars feel close enough to guide destinies. Danger is constant, yet meaning is everywhere. Carved into wood, sung in halls, and prayed into silence, this is the beginning of the medieval world, not as legend, but as lived reality, a fragile rebirth after collapse where humanity learns again how to build, remember, and survive. And as the sun climbs higher over field cities, deserts and forests, the medieval age steps forward carrying both the weight of the past and the promise of everything yet to come. As the medieval world grows older, it grows louder and more crowded as villages swell into towns and towns strain into cities, their streets narrow and alive with sound, hooves on stone iron rims rattling carts, vendors shouting prayers, bells, and arguments all colliding beneath open skies. Walls rise higher not only to keep enemies out, but to hold life in as populations surge and trade awakens long-dormant roots. Marketplaces breathe with color and motion. Bolts of wool, linen, and silk ripple in the wind. Fishmongers lay out silver scales still smelling of river, and sea bakers pull dark loaves from ovens, their crusts cracking as steam escapes, carrying warmth into cold streets. Money begins to speak louder than lineage, and coins pass from hand to hand, worn smooth by countless lives. In Europe, the grip of feudalism tightens, yet subtly shifts as towns demand charters and merchants challenge old hierarchies built only on land and sword. Guilds form, locking knowledge behind ritual. Oaths teaching sons the secrets of tanning, weaving, masonry, and metalwork, while cathedrals climb skyward stone by stone, their spires piercing clouds as acts of devotion and competition. Inside these vast shells of faith, stained glass ignites sunlight into stories of saints, martyrs, and judgment, painting floors with color as choirs rise and echo, turning belief into sound. These structures take generations to finish, built by hands that will never see completion, yet trust in eternity more than reward. But with growth comes shadow, and the medieval world learns how thin the line is between abundance and disaster. Harvests fail and famine stalks the land with silent feet, bellies hollow and eyes sunken, while prayers grow desperate and tempers sharp. Disease moves faster than armies, riding trade routes in crowded alleys, until the Black Death arrives like a whispered curse, then a scream. Carts roll through streets, collecting the dead. Torches burn, day and night. Smoke hangs heavy, and the smell of decay replaces bread. Doctors guess, priests plead, families vanish, and the certainty of death reshapes how people see God, power, and each other. Survivors emerge changed, questioning old orders, demanding wages, land, and dignity. In the Islamic world, scholars preserve and expand ancient wisdom, translating Greek, Persian, and Indian texts, while hospitals, universities, and observatories thrive. Physicians listen to the body rather than superstition, mapping illness with careful observation, while mathematicians shape numbers that will one day rule the world. Architecture blends geometry and light. Courtyards, fountains, and arches creating calm amid density, and faith flows through poetry, law, and daily habit, binding society together even as rival caliphates struggle for control. Trade across seas and deserts fuels wealth and ideas, moving faster than swords ever could too. The East Mongol thunder shakes the medieval world as horsemen ride with unmatched speed, discipline, and fear, carving an empire across continents. Cities fall, roads open, and for the first time in centuries, East and West are linked under one brutal yet stabilizing force. Silk, spices, and knowledge flow from China to Europe, while gunpowder changes warfare forever, turning castles obsolete and battlefields louder, deadlier, and less personal. Fear spreads, but so does connection, as travelers like merchants, monks, and explorers cross distances once unimaginable. China continues its cycle of order, collapse, and renewal, where Confucian ideals shape governance and civil service exams elevate scholars over warriors, at least in theory. Cities like Hangzhou swell with millions of bridges, canals, and markets, forming a rhythm of life unmatched elsewhere. Paper money circulates, printing spreads stories, laws, and news, while porcelain tea and compass technology quietly alter global habits. Medieval here is sophisticated, bureaucratic, and deeply rooted in balance between heaven, earth, and humanity. Across Africa, empires rise on trade, faith, and learning. As Mali reaches heights of wealth so vast it bends economies when gold floods foreign markets. Pilgrims journey to Mecca, crossing thousands of miles, carrying culture, ideas, and stories back home, while mosques, schools, and libraries anchor cities along the Niger. Oral tradition thrives, griots preserve history through voice, memory, and song, ensuring identity survives even when ink is scarce. Medieval Africa pulses with intellect and power, often unseen yet essential to the global story. Across oceans, the Americas develop their own medieval rhythms where Maya, Aztec, and Inca societies build cities, calendars, and roads aligned with cosmos, mountain, and sun. Stone temples rise from jungle and highland, ritual, sacrifice, and agriculture sustain dense populations, while knowledge is carved, knotted, and remembered rather than written. Isolation does not mean simplicity, but difference, a parallel world unfolding unseen by Eurasia, yet equally complex. As centuries pass, the medieval world becomes a web of interdependence, conflict, and transformation, where faith, technology, and ambition collide, shaping lives from peasant huts to royal courts. The sound of anvils blends with prayer chants, market cries, and marching boots, and beneath it all the human struggle remains unchanged: to survive, to belong, to believe, and to leave something behind before the long dark night finally gives way to a new age waiting just beyond the horizon. As the medieval world moves toward its later centuries, the rhythm of life grows more complex and more tense, as if the age itself senses that it is approaching a threshold. Cities stretch beyond their walls, suburbs form in fields once plowed by oxen, and the noise of life never truly fades as bells ring, workshops hum, and taverns spill laughter and anger into the streets. Clothing grows richer in color, and cut wool dyed deep reds, blues, and greens, while laws attempt to control who may wear what, revealing how power clings to appearance. Inside homes, the smell of tallow candles mingles with stews of root vegetables, meat, and herbs, simmering slowly over open fires as families gather close. Against cold stone and draft-filled rooms, war remains constant, but it changes shape as knights in shining armor become relics of an earlier imagination, replaced by disciplined infantry, pikes, crossbows, and early firearms that kill from a distance. The battlefield grows louder, filled with smoke screams and thunder as cannons shake the ground and turn castle walls into rubble. Feudal bonds weaken as kings centralize authority, building standing armies funded by taxes rather than loyalty. Banners still wave, but allegiance shifts toward crowns rather than lords, and the medieval order begins to crack from within. Faith continues to dominate the medieval mind, yet doubt seeps in quietly through suffering and corruption as grand cathedrals stand beside starving beggars, and wealthy bishops preach humility from golden altars. Reformers whisper that the church has drifted from its purpose, while mystics seek personal connection with the divine through visions, fasting, and solitude. Pilgrimages stretch across continents, roads filled with travelers limping, singing, praying, bound together by hope for healing, forgiveness, or meaning. Relics draw crowds, incense smoke coils upward, and faith remains powerful, but no longer unquestioned. Trade expands further than ever before, ships hug coastlines and dare open seas, guided by stars, compasses, and courage. Ports thrum with sailors speaking dozens of tongues, unloading barrels of wine, sacks of grain, spices, sugar, and enslaved humans whose suffering fuels profit. Merchant families rise to power, rivaling nobility through banks, contracts, and credit, turning trust into currency and paper into power. Cities like Venice, Genoa, Bruges, and later Lisbon become arteries of a global economy where risk is calculated and fortune is made or lost with a tide in workshops and mines. Innovation accelerates quietly. Windmills grind grain where rivers fail. Clocks begin to measure time more precisely, changing how people think about work, prayer, and life itself. Spectacles improve sight, allowing scholars to read longer, write more, and see deeper into texts and reality. Universities expand debating law, medicine, philosophy, and natural science as Aristotle returns through translation, challenging theology and igniting intellectual tension. Knowledge once confined to monasteries now spills into streets, classrooms, and courts, creating a new class of thinkers who question inherited truths across Eurasia. The echoes of empire linger as Ottoman forces rise, bridging medieval and early modern worlds, capturing Constantinople and transforming it into Istanbul, where domes, minarets, and markets fuse cultures into a living crossroads. The fall of this ancient city sends shockwaves through Europe, pushing scholars west, carrying manuscripts that will ignite a renaissance of art and thought. Cannons roar against walls once believed eternal, signaling that the medieval world of stone and tradition can no longer hold back change. In East Asia, Ming China consolidates power, restoring walls, fleets, and order, while treasure ships under Zheng He sail across oceans, displaying wealth, authority, and curiosity on a scale unseen, yet soon withdrawn as the state turns inward, choosing stability over exploration. In Japan, samurai culture evolves, bound by honor, loyalty, and ritual, while civil wars scar the land, proving that discipline and chaos often walk side by side. Medieval here is defined by restraint, ceremony, and the ever-present edge of violence. Africa continues its pulse of trade, belief, and learning, even as external pressures grow. Caravans and ships link continents, while internal kingdoms adapt to shifting routes and demands. In the Americas, great cities still rise and fall, guided by God's seasons and sacrifice, unaware of the cataclysm waiting beyond the horizon. Medieval worlds exist in parallel, unaware that collision is coming. As the medieval age nears its end, the air feels charged with anticipation and unease, like a storm building beyond the mountains. The old world has stretched itself thin, holding together faith, hierarchy, and tradition, while new forces, money, knowledge, and technology push relentlessly forward. The medieval world does not end in a single moment, but dissolves gradually into something unfamiliar, yet born from its struggles. And as torches burn low in castle halls and dawn breaks over bustling ports, the world stands on the edge of transformation, carrying forward the echoes of an age that shaped everything that followed. As the medieval world approaches its final turning, the pace of change accelerates like a river, narrowing before a fall, and people sense it even if they cannot name it. Seasons still govern life, yet something new presses against the old rhythms as ambition spreads beyond land and lineage into curiosity, profit, and power. The air in cities feels different, filled with urgency as presses clatter, workshops expand, and ideas move faster than horses ever could. The smell of ink joins that of bread, smoke, and sweat as printed words multiply, carrying scripture, poetry, law, and dissent into hands that once held only tools. Literacy grows quietly, and with it the dangerous realization that knowledge no longer belongs solely to priests or kings. In crowded streets, voices argue not just over prices, but over belief, authority, and justice, as sermons spill beyond churches into marketplaces and taverns, where travelers share stories of distant lands and new possibilities. Heresy becomes both fear and fuel as reformers challenge sacred institutions, exposing corruption, selling of forgiveness, and the distance between divine ideals and human practice. Faith does not vanish, but fractures and burns hotter as people seek truth not only through ritual, but through conscience and reason. The medieval soul wrestles with God in more personal ways, and the result is both liberation and bloodshed. Rulers respond by tightening control, building stronger bureaucracies, codifying laws, and demanding loyalty to crowns rather than customs. Courts become theaters of power filled with velvet steel and whispered intrigue, where marriages, treaties, and betrayals shape borders without a single battle. Taxation grows heavier, funding armies, roads, and palaces, while peasants feel the weight in their backs and empty bowls. Revolts spark across regions, farmers, artisans, and laborers, rising briefly against systems that squeeze them until order is restored, often brutally. Yet the idea that power can be questioned no longer disappears. War itself becomes a force of transformation as medieval chivalry fades into myth and organized violence becomes impersonal, strategic, and devastating. Gunpowder weapons dominate fields and sieges, turning knights into targets and castles into ruins. The sound of battle is no longer steel on steel, but thunder, smoke, and screams echoing across flattened land. Veterans return changed, carrying trauma, scars, and stories that reshape how societies understand honor and sacrifice. The medieval romance of war dissolves under the reality of mass death. Across the sea, ships venture farther, driven by hunger for spice, gold, souls, and glory. Navigators study winds, currents, and stars as ports swell with activity, ropes creak, sails snap, and the smell of salt and tar clings to everything. Maps grow more ambitious, filling blank spaces with imagined monsters and promised riches. Maritime kingdoms invest in fleets, transforming coastlines into gateways of empire. The medieval world stretches outward, touching edges once only guessed at, and in doing so prepares the stage for encounters that will change history forever. In workshops, artists and thinkers begin to look at humanity differently, studying anatomy, perspective, and nature with renewed intensity. Medieval symbolism gives way to observation as painters, sculptors, and architects draw inspiration from the real world as much as heaven. Patrons commission works that celebrate human form, emotion, and achievement alongside faith. Beauty becomes a statement of power and intellect, and art steps out of purely sacred spaces into civic life. This shift does not erase medieval belief but enriches it, blending devotion with curiosity. Far beyond Europe, the ripples of change reach ancient civilizations where empires adapt or resist as trade networks shift and foreign influences arrive. In the Islamic world, scholars debate how to balance tradition with innovation while political fragmentation weakens once unified realms. In Africa, coastal contacts intensify, drawing kingdoms into global systems of exchange, both prosperous and destructive. In the Americas, civilizations continue their cycles, unaware that ships are crossing toward them, carrying unfamiliar diseases, beliefs, and ambitions that will shatter worlds. Medieval age now stands like a bridge behind and ahead, at once rooted in stone. Ritual and hierarchy, yet pulled forward by paper, powder, and possibility. People still live by candlelight, yet dream of horizons beyond forests, deserts, and seas. They pray under vaulted ceilings and sleep beneath thatched roofs while imagining futures their ancestors never could. The medieval world does not simply end, it transforms, shedding skins, layers, and certainties as humanity steps cautiously into a new era forged by centuries of struggle, faith, and resilience. And as dawn breaks over towers, ports, and fields, the last echoes of the medieval world fade not into silence but into the foundation of everything that follows. As the final light of the medieval world stretches across history, it does not fade quietly but lingers like embers glowing beneath ash, inviting curiosity about what was lost, what endured, and what was quietly carried forward. This age, so often imagined as distant and silent, was in truth alive with motion, invention, contradiction, and emotion. The medieval world was not a pause between ancient glory and modern brilliance, but a vast living bridge where humanity relearned how to survive after collapse and unknowingly prepared to reshape the planet itself. The final centuries, people still wake before dawn to the sound of roosters, bells, and wind moving through timber-bird streets. They still knead bread with aching hands, sharpen tools at stone wheels, and whisper prayers before dangerous journeys. Yet the way they see the world has shifted as horizons feel closer and possibility heavier. A farmer hears rumors of lands beyond the sea, a sailor speaks of strange stars, a scholar reads words, printed by a machine that multiplies truth and lies alike. Curiosity seeps into everyday life, transforming fear of the unknown into hunger for it. Medieval landscape remains deeply physical, thick with sensation and memory. Forests still loom dark and alive, filled with creaking branches, animal eyes, and the smell of damp earth where hunters move cautiously, guided by instinct rather than maps. Fields ripple under wind, dotted with laborers bent beneath the sun, their lives tethered to soil weather and inherited obligation. Cities rise louder and denser, stone pressing against stone as chimneys stain the sky, and narrow streets echo with footsteps, laughter, and confrontation. This is a world that touches every sense, constantly demanding awareness, resilience, and adaptation. What makes the medieval world so enduring is not its kings or battles, but its ordinary people, whose names are lost yet whose lives shaped everything that followed. Women brewing ale, keeping households, managing markets and land while excluded from power, yet central to survival. Children working early, learning trades through repetition and scars rather than schooling. Elders carrying memory in stories, songs, and warnings spoken by firelight. These lives form the invisible architecture of history, stronger than castles, more persistent than crowns, forgotten. Technologies quietly define the age: watermills transforming rivers into energy, blast furnaces refining metal, windmills turning sky into labor crop, rotation feeding populations, clockwork changing how humans understand time itself. These inventions are not dramatic, yet they alter civilization, permanently proving that progress often arrives without announcement. The medieval mind, though wrapped in faith and tradition, is not stagnant, but experimental, adapting tools, methods, and ideas through necessity. Rather than ideology, belief remains the spine of medieval existence, yet it is layered, complex, and deeply human. Faith offers comfort, explanation, and order, but also conflict, guilt, and justification for cruelty. People pray for rain, forgiveness, victory, and relief from pain while grappling with doubt, fear, and injustice. Sacred and mundane blur as saints protect harvests, relics heal illness, and omens shape decisions. Spirituality is not abstract but woven into dirt, blood, birth, and death, making the medieval worldview intimate, intense, and emotionally charged. Across continents, medieval cultures remain connected by trade, conflict, and curiosity long before modern globalization. A coin minted in one empire passes through dozens of hands, carrying stories, borders, and value with it. Spices alter diets, textiles change identity, weapons shift power, and ideas migrate faster than armies. The medieval world is already global, though unaware of the word. Bound together by roots carved through sand, sea, and mountain, what truly ends the medieval age is not a single event, but a change in perspective as humans begin to place themselves at the center of inquiry, measuring nature, questioning authority, and imagining futures not solely defined by divine will. Yet even this shift is born from medieval foundations: monasteries, universities, workshops, and traditions that preserve knowledge long enough for transformation to occur. The medieval world gives birth to modernity, even as it disappears. Within it, as the final echoes of this age recede, they leave behind more than ruins, manuscripts, and legends. They leave habits, ways of thinking, systems of power, and cultural memory that still shape lives centuries later. The medieval world survives in city layouts, legal systems, festivals, languages, myths, and the human instinct to seek meaning and struggle. It lives in the romance of stone halls, the discipline of craft, the tension between belief and reason, and the enduring question of how to live within forces greater than oneself. And so the medieval world does not close like a finished book, but like a Door left slightly open, inviting those who listen closely to hear the sounds of hammers, bells, prayers, and footsteps still moving through time, reminding us that this age was not darkness, but a forge where humanity was tested, reshaped, and prepared for everything that came after. A world distant, yet deeply familiar, whose heartbeat still echoes beneath the surface of our own.